Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Daniel Moses, founder of Property Wealth Corporation. Daniel is a property mogul, an international speaker, award winning property and business consultant, not to mention an Amazon best-selling author. Daniel, have I missed anything off?
Not at all. You've done a perfect job.
Amazing, amazing. That's great. So, Daniel, please do, if you don't mind, start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your journey to getting where you are today.
Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been entrepreneur almost all my life, apart from the fact that there were different times or a different part of my journey where I had encountered several different kind of challenges where I eventually became an Uber driver, and at some point in my life where I worked as a cleaner, and as well as did all sort of linear jobs, at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. So, in a nutshell, I like to call myself that I'm a born entrepreneur. So, just on the back of that, I mean, I'm a third generation immigrant. I was born and bred in Nigeria, Edo State, Nigeria, and I came to the UK in search of a better life.
Yeah,
And whilst growing up from a very young age, I would sell anything, even into the time I was in university, I was the sales guy. So sell clothes, sell cars, sell spare parts, sell used electronics back in uni days. And when I eventually left Nigeria and I came into the UK, kind of had that mentality, but obviously because I'm coming from a different country into a new country, I couldn't just start selling anything here,
yeah,
right? So I had to kind of do all sort of linear jobs, from cleaning, from helping people load their cars, their vans in Peckham High Street, and I had to just do anything to survive. But I really never had a proper job at that time. But then again, I didn't have the legitimate legal status to have a job in the UK. Like my children would never understand what I mean by legal immigration status. They would never
yeah,
know that. But I had to go through that. You have to have a legal status, the right paperwork in order for you to get a proper job or be employed or even trade, basically, even to trade with people, to have a bank account that money can get sent into. Back in those days, 21 years ago, you have to have a bank, you have to have a legal status to open a bank account. Unlike now, things are being simplified. You have the likes of Monzo, you have
yeah,
the likes of the different types of banks that will just basically take your generic ID document and still set up an account for you. So that's the era I've basically come from. Being an entrepreneur, did everything that I could do to survive, apart from doing linear job. But I think the biggest pivotal moment of my entrepreneurial journey was after, staying in the UK for at least the first 12 months, where I started, buying clothes and shipping to Africa, picking up refrigerators, televisions, picking them through the streets and sending them back to Africa to sell. And also at some point, I also had an internet cafe set up. I just basically did anything the normal entrepreneur would do to survive, right?
yeah. Hustling.
And that's what entrepreneurs do, right? Entrepreneurs basically
Absolutely.
do anything, just keep testing different things to survive. So, and I got to a point where it was okay to earn a living and things wasn't working as it should work. So after living in the UK for over 4 years or so, I decided to about 4 or 5 years or so, I decided to relocate back. So I first came into the UK 5 years prior. I then eventually went back to Africa and then started oil and gas back in Africa as an entrepreneur as well. And yeah, I've just been on the journey. I was on a journey, and back in 2013, I started oil and gas, and then 2015, I lost that company. I lost over 150,000 pounds, went bankrupt, and everything just basically went very bad. And I started driving for Uber, and I started driving for Uber, and I drove for Uber for about 2 years. Whilst I was driving for Uber was where I actually found out about property. So this was back in 2016. And from 2016, I started researching, into real estate, and 2017, I basically got myself off the ground in real estate. And that is the sort of success that people kind of see now. So I've been on this journey for around about 22 years.
Wow, that's a long journey.
Yeah, 22 years. Actually, I probably say I started knowing exactly what I was doing from 2017 when I eventually got into real estate. So now I've never done anything else since then. So I've just focused on real estate and I'm just perfecting the skill. And I've had the opportunity of doing multiple property deals and running a coaching program, writing multiple books, expanding my network. I think I'll pause for now.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Very detailed. Thank you very much, Daniel. So, Daniel, you mentioned about being a born entrepreneur, right? Now, where would you say that drive comes from? Is that innate within you? Have you seen somebody growing up who you look up to? Or is that something always in the back of your mind that you always want more? Where does that stem from? Because not everybody has that drive and not everybody sees life that way. Where would you say you get that from?
I'm a very strong believer of the supernatural. I definitely believe in God. So I think the easiest answer to that question is it was just God given instinct. Apart from the surrounding circumstance around me, in terms of family, my extended family, my immediate family back in Nigeria, sitting where I am now today, I would want to say it's God because you can look at people, you can look at people around you. All right. You know, I'm somebody that is very inspired, by Donald Trump. I'm
Yeah.
somebody that's very inspired by Richard Branson. I'm somebody that's very inspired by Elon Musk. Hate these guys or love them. I'm somebody that's been very inspired by these people. But if you don't have the God aspect of it, if you don't have that godly sort of that intuition inside of you, the truth be told, you will soon burn out. Business is all about being a business person and entrepreneurship. You're trying to generate income for yourself. You're basically turning nothing into something.
Absolutely.
So basically, you have an idea, you think it's going to work. You get the idea created and you try to sell it to the public, and people buy into that thought process and that generation of income. Or whether is, for example, you're going to go and buy stock of phones, and then you basically put them in the high street of Peckham to try and sell these phones, to other people. Instead of going to Apple shop, people come to buy used phone from you. You're taking something to the market. So why would people want to buy, your phone that has no guarantee? Why, when they can actually walk into an Apple shop and actually buy an Apple phone that has a guarantee? You can imagine that for a minute, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I had to, sitting from where I am, I had to believe that it's God, all right, that has given me the ability to just know that, entrepreneurship was the right path. Especially, I mean, I'm a first generation immigrant. I came to this country. People, my color, people from where I'm from, the only thing we think about when we come into a new country like this is a job,
Yeah.
is to work. So for me to have been in that sort of where I've had, different types of roller coasters, different types of challenges, and to now being able to be a thought figure within the business industry, especially with real estate, I can only give that sort of where my passion is come from, where that born entrepreneurship that you spoke about has come from, is knowing that this thing inside of me for over 22 years has to stay and has to be developed and has now been able to create where people like you read my story and you like, what, this is a guy I like to have in my show. Credit to the supernatural first, which is God here.
Absolutely. I think it comes down to the point where the biggest challenges and opportunities God sort of gives to his, best soldiers, that who he believes are able to go through the thick and thin and persevere and have that discipline. Not everybody is bestowed with that opportunity and that chance. And I think I completely agree, it does come from, divine intervention. So completely agree, on that point there. Your journey from Uber driver to obviously, property mogul that you are now, what was the single biggest mindset shift you had to make? Because obviously we talked about mindset at the beginning. What was the biggest mindset shift you had to make to transition from Uber driver to where you are now?
I mean, I'm a product of pain. I'm a product of pain. I've been through so much pain than the average normal person. I see a lot of people celebrate success a lot of celebration of success. In my career as an entrepreneur, I've been through so much pain that I haven't even told the world about.
Yeah.
I haven't even shared so much pain, so much challenges, so much failures, so many resets.
Yeah.
In fact, too many resets. Have you ever heard about that In America, this is very common in the US. They said an average successful entrepreneur, multi-millionaire, billionaire in the US, some of them go through almost like 6 times bankruptcy. There's something about bankruptcy and entrepreneurs that become so successful.
Yeah.
And obviously, a lot of people go through their own, but I believe, man, I've been through some dark moments. So I only had to remap my brain. I only had to rewire my mindset in order for me to be talking about success today. My father never thought he would be a millionaire in pounds. My father never thought about that. My mother never thought of owning assets in equity that could, if I was to liquidate my equity today in my company, I walk away with a good couple of million. If I was to liquidate my company today and sell all my assets, buy out, pay off the mortgages and everything else, I'll walk away with at least over $1 million, easy, top of my head. So to be in a foreign country, to have been able to do that within a very short space of time, I didn't realize this is a short space of time until I recently had a conversation with someone who was really up there. He says, Daniel, your presence everywhere seems to be like you've been there for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I said, really? And he said, yes. I said, well, it comes from the number of time I've been in business for. However, it felt like my success has come very quickly. No, but I've been on this journey for over 22 years that I can actually look back and say, you know what, 2017, all right, in the last 8 years of over 22 years, I can actually call myself a success. So mindset had to play a huge role. The mindset to pick up when I didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
The mindset to negotiate when I didn't even have the money in the bank account. The mindset to believe that you, Harris, or is your Harris, right? Is your name
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
The mindset to believe that Harris could be the next investor that may want to work with me when I had zero money.
Yeah.
The mindset that took me from literally a nobody to somebody who has successfully raised over £2 million in a very short space of time from social media. All right, these are people that did not know me from anywhere. It only takes the mindset to believe that Harris could give me £200,000 of his hand money to work with me. So I am a very big believer of the fact that to be successful, you have to first of all rewire your brain. You have to change your environment. You have to mix with the right people. You have to have the right conversation with the right people. So these are things that has been able to help me make those shifts.
Amazing. That's amazing. Great. Now, I guess on a lighter note now, just, so yeah, I guess people want to understand, what does a typical day look like for somebody as busy, and dealing with lots of different things? What does a typical day look like from you? When you start your day, how does your day transition? I understand obviously you work with lots of different team members, you have lots of different people across the world. And then, how do you transition to the end of the day?
I'm going to speak to two different people here. So let's speak to the person who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur. And then I'm going to speak to the person who's already an entrepreneur. The person that's already an entrepreneur, been in the game long as myself, will probably agree with what I'm about to say. I think the oncoming entrepreneur, the aspiring entrepreneur will already think, Daniel, if you look at these guys on social media, you think, wow, they got it so perfect. They got it all figured out. Man, I'm trying to figure my life out every day.
Yeah.
My best friend is my notes, right? This is my best friend, right? I wake up in the morning. The first thing I open is basically write the 20 priorities I have in the day and how I'm going to distribute that delegation to two of my PAs and as well as my operations director. All right. So, and that's just one big bulk of it. So I write everything down every single morning, and I write everything down on a Sunday that's going to happen for the week. And I revisit what's going to happen in the day, because sometimes you can plan your whole week out and it never goes according to plan.
Never goes to plan.
Anyone that tell you that it all goes out to plan is a liar.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
never goes according to plan.
Absolutely. That's one thing you can, trust on, that it's never going to go to plan. There's always going to be something.
So I can plan my whole week on a Sunday night, and some things could come up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll give an example. 4 weeks ago, I didn't anticipate I'll be in Nigeria, right? And I wasn't planning on going to Nigeria for a speaking gig. And all of a sudden the gig comes through. We're going to pay your ticket, first class. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm like, Malika, could you move this, move that? I'm done with it.
Yeah.
They only invited me for 3 days, but I had to go for 3 weeks.
Wow.
So a lot of things that I already had planned from the beginning of January had to be moved for 3 weeks. So that just gives you a simple, the life entrepreneur, the entrepreneurial life is never really structured. That's the truth. If you work in a corporate industry, if you work in a 9 to 5, yes, you can be very 100% structured. So how does my day go? I'd probably say my day goes past 40% structured, 60% unstructured. So
Okay.
he's busy. I would always move things around, and I delegate now. Many years ago, I didn't have the opportunity to delegate. But then again, I've had a few of my team members work with me for at least 4 years, 5 years. Basically, some of them, they're at the place where they can actually deal with a lot of stuff on my behalf already. But this is the skill that I have to run my day as an entrepreneur, because I deal with a lot of complex property advisory services. So I consult a lot of property transactions. I do a lot of, bespoke advisory property consulting advice. I do a lot of acquisitions. I do a lot of negotiation on property deals. I do a lot of project management. So I've got a lot of pieces and puzzles that needs to be put together in a day. So the biggest part of my day is that morning meetings, where I spend at least the first hour, or the first hour with my first PA, and then the second part is with my administrative team, where we
Yeah.
just kind of brainstorm about 45 minutes of what's going to happen, and then I then leave that to them, and they start to deal with all the other chaos that could come in a day.
Yeah.
But we just get through the day. It's really busy. Well, I try to wrap up the day these days around about. I just try to run up the day. Sometimes at 4 o'clock when I have the luxury, but sometimes if I don't, I just write on. I'm currently writing 2 books at the same time that are coming out this year right now. So after 6, I try to chip in a chapter to there, speak my book, get it written, edited. Then so the typical day, it's just busy. Busy doesn't stop.
That's the name of the game. The name of the game. Perfect. So, Daniel, if we can just transition into industry trends, I think that's a lot of important topics there that a lot of people want to really hear about and definitely get your take on. What major shifts at this moment in time are you seeing in the property industry at the minute? And where do you see the trends actually going in the future?
So I've been in the property space now for 8 years. And 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I was so passionate about the property market in the UK. So passionate, like I never ever thought I would basically diversify. But last year, June, I started to look at what's happening in the UK, and I started to look into all the different markets. So, for example, I saw that in Dubai, you can basically do deals that can basically return 30, 40% like that. In the UK, we're talking about, you know, yearly ROI if you're basically holding assets, and as well as, well, if you're trying to flip deals, if you're lucky, you can flip a deal that, you know, you could basically have about 20% net increase on your total cost, and which is not that bad. But in other markets, you could basically get a really, really interesting distressed market that needs less analysis, and you can be making about 40% just like that. I just came back from Dubai in January. I went to Nigeria and then went to Dubai. The UK market is one of the most regulated markets in real estate, and people are discovering that you make more money in a less regulated market. So there is less restriction and there's less regulation in Dubai market. And you can buy, the time frame of acquiring an asset in Dubai takes less than 2 to 3 weeks. The time frame to acquire an asset in the UK easily can take up to 3 months because of the number of representation, the number of due diligences that take care of the market. So at the end of the day, for me right now, I have my appetite is kind of an holistic view of the market. So what is happening in the UK? Do we have clients? Let's serve those clients. Let's do projects for ourselves as well. Do we have projects in Dubai? Yes, let's get some offline deals in Dubai. Can we get into some property transactions in the US? Yes, let's get to America. Let's get some deal done. Africa at the moment, a lot of people who are looking to export, move their funds back to Africa. Let's do some transactions there. What sets us apart? Credibility. So I think with the market trends at the moment, this is no longer a market for you to say, I'm only in a UK market. That is the number one. You cannot be in real estate in one market. You have to diversify your income. You have to diversify your clientele portfolio. You have to diversify the kind of transactions you're getting involved with. So the first thing in the market trend at the moment is it's a lot of people diversifying, people moving to different continents, different country, Obviously UK is still one of the most in real estate. UK is still one of the oldest market out there in terms of ability to lend, ability to leverage. The UK market is quite stable, but if you're already stable in the UK, you want to look outside of the UK as well. So for me, one of the biggest part of the trends that I'm following at the moment, it's a global real estate market rather than looking at just a UK real estate market. So I'm basically looking at an entire market that has to do with global. Can I get somebody that wants to do property transaction in the UK, and can I get it sorted out for them? Or can I collaborate with them? Can I get their money? Can we joint venture? Can they be my investor? Can I take a UK investor who wants to do transaction in Dubai? And can I get that sorted with them? Now, in terms of regulation, obviously we know that the chancellor obviously passed a few, regulations, during the last budget. We know at the moment stamp duty is going to go to what, 5%. So again, that is making the UK market less attractive. But then again, there are other opportunities like your commercial mixed-use acquisition properties types, and as well as land development as well. There are multiple trends. So for me, one of the things I always like to do, because my kind of market that I deal with, it's not just acquisition alone for self-investment. It's also dealing with clients and helping clients acquire asset, manage refurbs, project management, and all of these different things. I just basically look at what can I do now based on this trend that can give me money or that can put money in the bank account of my client. If I don't have a client coming through, because I do a lot of bespoke transactions, so it's always case by case. All right, we understand there are so many trends happening right now, but it's always case by case. How can we make money in the commercial market? How can we acquire an asset in Dubai for a client? How can we generate that profit? How can we make sure the client is buying the right asset? How can we buy the next commercial building in England? How can we convert that into a house of multiple occupation? So there are multiple things, there's so many different trends at the moment in the market.
That makes sense. And you talked about diversifying, and I completely agree with that. I think it's the saying goes not to put all your eggs in one basket, right? And I think the way that the UK is heading, especially with the different taxes and the laws and everything coming in, I think it's making it very, very difficult for people entering the market, but also people to actually succeed in the market. Now, a big question I had was, when looking to diversify, what are the biggest challenges and risks that investors could face and should be prepared for when looking to diversify across different continents, across different regions, across the world?
So the biggest part of diversification is due diligence. Your ability to have a robust due diligence on that market. In Nigeria, where I'm from, I can walk into a bank and I can deposit £1 billion in my bank account in Nigeria. Nobody's going to ask me any question, right? Because I already have that relationship with my account officer. I have an account officer. So there is a human being who is called an account officer who knows me. So my account was set up by somebody who knows me in the bank. So there is a strong rapport there. In Dubai, I can take £100,000 and deposit that money into my bank account in Dubai. Again, you also have a personal account officer that also kind of knows you. In the UK, you can't walk into a bank to deposit 100,000.
Not possible.
You can't have £100,000 cash around you. So it's important to understand how things work in different countries. For example, all right, there are some countries, their anti-money laundering is very robust, like the UK, right? So the UK is very cautious about money laundering. The whole world is cautious about money laundering. But the UK will stop a transaction first and then investigate and then further into that conversation, right? But in Nigeria or in Africa or in Dubai, it's very people relative. So because you have a consistent engagement with a human being all the time that knows you, so they've actually put in some setting notes underneath your account that this is how your transaction is. So there is already somebody that knows you already. Whereas in the UK banking system, is a system, not a human being. So the system automatically flags suspicious transactions. So for example, if your account has never had a £50,000 before and you have £50,000 comes in, the system flags it up. But for example, in Dubai, because you have an account manager, right? So I have an account in Dubai and I have an account manager. So before the money comes in, I already spoke, hey, Hadi, what's going on? I've just completed a sale. There's £100,000 coming to my account. Let me know. In the UK, there isn't any, because it's a system. The UK is a system, whereas in Dubai, in Africa, it's a human being that knows your business, what your business does. So it's important for you to understand how to do just simple anti-money laundering check on transactions that you're getting involved with. Does that make sense? So due diligence is quite very important. So how does those due diligence work? So for example, one other example is you can't just have an inflow of a transaction coming from Turkey, hit your bank account tomorrow, and you're buying a house in the UK. It's not going to happen. It will never happen.
Yeah,
All right.
that makes sense.
That money there has to be a trail of that money coming in from Turkey into the UK. All right. For a period of time for you to be able to facilitate a purchase of a property transaction tomorrow. I can take £100,000 to Dubai tomorrow and I can buy a house as long as I can just print the bank account statement and just give it to them and that's it. Well, in the UK, the due diligence is a bit different. So you have to understand what works in the UK doesn't work in Dubai. What works in Dubai doesn't work in the UK. So one of the biggest parts when you're diversifying is your ability to understand the laws, the regulations, the anti-money laundering checks, what is their limits. I think the biggest part with my industry is money laundering. So that's the biggest part. And obviously, there's so many other things. There's so many other types of diligence, due diligence, ID checks, and all these different things. So I think that's the biggest part. And then the final part is the ability to collaborate. You don't have to be the expert in those countries. So when I started, doing transactions in Dubai, I looked for a credible individual in that market to collaborate with and to split whatever fees that is to be made. So he basically does my due diligence. Is credible enough so I can rely on his information and pass his information across. So the information is given to me plus my little bit, due diligence that is being done by my in-house team. I'm able to pass that information to my client because my client is dealing with me and not him. So I need to be sure that my local guy in Dubai, my guy in the US, has a robust information on the market inside out in their country so I can collaborate with them. So that saves me time and I can split my commission and I can serve the whole market. Collaboration is key, and as well as having an an overview of the market is important.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, Daniel, if we talk about the current state of, business and business operations, coming down and, niching down just within your business, what would you say is working well for you within the business? And what areas of the business do you feel are the most frustrating? And what metrics and area of the business are you looking to improve the most?
The biggest part of any business is people. You can't work with people. You can't work without them. The biggest part of any business, I believe, is people. Getting the right people on board, having to get them to have the right mindset, the right attitude towards work is the biggest problem, especially when you are a small business trying to grow with employees. So people, for me, is the biggest challenge. All right. And as well as the biggest success is also people. So when you start there's something I call the street entrepreneur and the corporate entrepreneur, right? The street entrepreneur is a guy that wakes up and says, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm just going to go and learn this thing now. I'm going to go and, go and become an entrepreneur. I'm the CEO, the director of my company. I'm just going to sell something. It works and I'm just going to scale it. Or the guy who basically becomes the entrepreneur, the corporate entrepreneur, for example, he's already a director level and he's the chief marketing advisor in Apple and decides to set up a marketing firm and becomes, the entrepreneur. So he's built on experience, while the street entrepreneur is just trying to test a few couple of things to make it work. For example, I'm a street entrepreneur because I sold all these different things to eventually find a niche in real estate. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
the biggest part will be trying to understand the mindset of how people really work.
Yeah. Okay.
Put things in place so that they can follow those processes, all right, to be able to serve the market. So a few things I'm putting in place is just now we're using a lot of systems. We use a lot of, we're doing a lot, we have I work from home and I have a small team in the office. So again, just being able to use systems such as, Monday.com to delegate tasks, to manage, different kind of tasks. We implement a lot of systems, a lot of different tools to manage a company. We use emails a lot, and we also use a lot of automations as well to just kind of handle every aspect of the business. We use Go High Level a lot, for various things. A lot of automations. We're using a lot of AI integration now as well. In a couple of months' time, we're going to be implementing a lot of AI sales assistants.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
and as well as AI community builder. So basically having an AI who can basically call a lot of our clients on our behalf and just help us build relationship.
That's amazing. Now, within different departments of the business, obviously you have marketing, you have sales, operations, accounts, etc. What areas you have customer support, which is, I guess, very, very big. You talked about communication as well being important. What areas within departmental functions would you say they're the most challenges, and how are you looking to overcome them?
I think the most part of my company, I would use my company as operation. And one of the things we continue to do to upgrade operation is training. Because when it comes, you can't automate, can't, it's almost impossible to completely automate operation, right? Because there are some things that you can't automate. There are some things that you can't just go and pick an SOP and answer the question. You know, uh, there's some things that needs a lot of human response, empathy, communication. So training is the way we are obviously actively helping our operations director to continue to grow in that department.
Okay, interesting. In terms of the biggest obstacles when it comes to investment, right, and securing, capital for new ventures, what's been one of the biggest challenges, and what's one where you've been able to overcome that, would you say?
The biggest challenges, I'll probably use the biggest challenge I had
Okay. Yep.
securing investment. The biggest challenge I had in securing investment is never marketing enough.
Right.
So, and how we overcoming it, we continue to intensify our marketing. We, the it's in terms of how I've been able to raise investment, it's a known game. If people don't know you, people are not going to invest with you, right? If
Right.
people don't know you, people are not going to invest with you. And to actively, consistently be credible. So for me, one of the things that we continue to do is to make sure with the last blood of my vein is to maintain integrity no matter what, carry our investors along. There will be bad days, but we always kind of have that open communication with them. So and we continue to make sure that we are active on the media because the media has helped us a lot. Being seen on TVs, being seen on social media, email campaigns, and actively encouraging, you know, um, our clients to reach out to us, to book a call with us. So these are things that we've done, and these are things that we continue to do because it's raising investment. Because the kind of way we've raised investment are people that didn't know us. They saw us on social media. They saw what we asked for, and they put in their details there to say, "Hey, I'd like to know more." And they became friends, and from friendship they became an investor. And that's exactly what's worked for us so far. Except now that we are, pivoting more family offices. But then again, these people still want to know how credible you are. And one of the things that's worked for us actively is being able to tell our past investors, our current investors, to talk to our past investors has worked for us a lot. So Harris gave us money a year ago. Speak to him and just ask him what was his experience like. So that's worked for us. So we continue to do things like that in order to grow our investment database.
No, that's amazing. Amazing. Now, I guess now if we transition on to what the future looks like for yourself and the company and some of the goals that you want to be achieving, where do you want to be and where do you see yourself in the next 6 to 12 months? How big are your ambitions and what are the goals that, are in your mind that is what I want to achieve?
Interesting. I've got 2 books coming out this year.
Okay.
One is called The Secret of the Wealthy, all right, and how to leverage. Basically, Secret of the Wealthy is teaching people how to leverage because I've leveraged a lot, and leverage is something that I'm so good at. So that book teaches you how to basically raise capital, leverage other people's money, and so on and so forth. So that's due to be out in a matter of months. And the other one is a book that I've just, that I'm still writing. It's not done. It's not completely done yet. That I have had the opportunity of interviewing presidents, policymakers, and pioneers. I've written for entrepreneurs. So the major purpose of writing that book with 4 past presidents and 1 current president, the goal for us is to go into other African countries where we actually can real estate with government in collaboration. So imagine collaborating with a government in somewhere in Africa especially there's so much opportunity in Africa at the moment. So being able to go into a complete different space and being so known in that space. Now, it takes a lot to write a book. And by writing a book, you become an authority in various different types of topics. So I've written book on property, I've written book on mindset, I've written book on how to raise money, and I've written a book on leadership. So that's kind of give me a very solid stand as an entrepreneur based on what I've achieved, based on what I'm working on, and based on where I'm going to. And that gives, people who are interested in what I want to do to really say, you know what, before I actually invest with this guy, before I do something with this guy, let me read his books. Because if you read my book, automatically see my personality will come across what I'm saying. So these are major things I'm doing. I mean, the biggest one is this book on leadership, where I've co-written with 4 past heads of states, across Africa, 2 past head of state in Nigeria, where I'm originally from. I used to be an Uber driver. I never thought I'd be even associated with a former president of my country. It was like a dream, and I'm living in that dream now. Like, wow, the dreams do come true. For what we're trying to achieve in the next 6 months to the end of this year is to basically be seen as a thought leader in the space that I am in. And by doing so is be able to discuss topics like leadership, finance, and we're working so hard on basically 2 things, either actually setting up a family office or even basically starting a fund. Definitely not going to be in the UK. The UK is too regulated, and the UK is too hard, to set up a fund. So we're looking at countries like Mauritius, and we're looking at another country like Rwanda. So those 2 countries are countries that we're looking to setting up a fund and gradually even owning a community bank. So that's where we're going to. Because when we can do those things, we can actually expand our real estate portfolio by collaborating with governments and collaborating with corporations to and be able to basically, there is so much housing shortage in Africa, and people still don't have decent homes to live in. So so by being able to set up funds where people can obviously bring their money and get return on investments per year, and through being able to be known and being trusted and being, being able to leverage of what we've achieved in 8 years in the real estate market in the UK, we can be able to deliver the bigger picture, which is mass housing and, being delivered through our own fund or through our collaborating partners through our family office that we're looking to set up.
Amazing, amazing. And one thing I noticed, which I'm actually quite looking forward to, is you've set quite an ambitious goal of 100 million portfolio in 10 years, right?
Yes.
Now, if I was to place a bet, I think you're definitely going to do it because you've got the mindset. But what biggest obstacles do you think are in your way at the minute, and how do you plan to overcome them?
But the biggest challenge is not becoming unknown.
Okay.
But in order to overcome it, and that's the reason why I found my way to writing books with 4 past presidents and a current president, and even a UK former prime minister. And when the book goes out, the whole world is going to hear about this book written by a former Uber driver, written by an immigrant, written by a guy who was a nobody. And then more people are going to pick up interest.
No, that's amazing.
And when we launch the book, it's not going to just be launched in the UK, it's going to be launched across about 7 countries in the first 12 months. So it's going to be like a moving jet of people talking about it. We have actually allocated a tremendous PR budget behind the book. So, and it's going to be insane. Do not know any Black entrepreneur right now who has co-written a book on leadership with the kind of figures that I have been able to crack in my leadership. I don't know anyone who's done it.
Would you say you're now at the stage where you're now more involved and concerned with impact and making a difference rather than profit and making a living? Or would you say there's some sort of importance behind that aspect as well? Or are you past that now and looking at what impact can you leave behind?
So for me right now, it's all about, why would I want to write a book on leadership? It's beyond money now. Why am I talking about mass housing? £100 million. When you start to talk about £100 million in real estate portfolio, that is a lot of portfolio in Africa. That's a lot of assets in Africa. When I first said we have an ambition to build £100 million in network, people said, was that in pounds or is that going to be in the UK? I kept my mouth shut. I didn't really go in depth about it, but I knew where I was going to. If the government of Rwanda decides to allocate me a land and I build 5,000 housing or even 1,000 housing in Rwanda, another 1,000 in Tanzania, another 1,000 in Nigeria, we got 6.4 billion people in Africa, in the continent. Statistics have said to us by the year 2035, we'll be about 2.5 billion in that part of the world. So which means every 10 individuals you see, one is from Africa. If every 10 human beings you see, one's from Africa. So that's how big that we're going to be by the year 2035. There is no more lands to build in the UK. We renovate houses a lot more than we actually build. But in Africa, there's so much land to be built. In Dubai, look at what's happening there right now in the Middle East. It's insane. Look at what's happening in Saudi Arabia. Though I'm not really looking to get into the Saudi Arabian market for now, but Dubai I'm quite passionate about. So it's all about impact, not about the money now. Because to be honest, the real wealth is created through impact. So I'm looking to solve a housing problem. And if I can solve a housing problem and I can get the right people to bring funds into my fund or my family office, whichever way, we're still doing a lot of consulting at the moment. Most people will say, don't talk about what you're doing. I always like to talk about what I'm doing because it's a way of holding myself accountable, by the way.
Right.
So yeah, it's a way of holding myself accountable, by the way. So because even the Bible says it, Jesus Christ says it, write the vision down, play it on tablets so you can run with it. So tell the whole world what you're going to do. So cut long story short, yeah, for me, it's all about impact now. Even already my tenants, the kind of product that I deliver to my tenants and how I look after my tenants, my management team look after my tenant really well. It's insane because I always want to make people feel good. I always go on above to deliver. No matter what, with my last blood, I deliver what I said I would do. So it's all about impact because the real wealth, real money is created when there is true delivery of impact.
That's amazing. Amazing. Now, just before we round up, right, I want to ask you one final question. Now, if you were back behind the Uber wheel, right, and you're back in that position, or there's somebody right in the similar position, what's one key piece of advice you'd give to them, knowing what you know now, right, that could potentially change the direction of, they're on?
I recently read the Bible and the Bible, I can't remember the verse now. I think I need to make sure I have that verse in my head because it really changed everything. The Bible in that particular verse says, as far as you can dream. So if I was to be speaking to somebody who's driving an Uber now, I would say to them is as far as they can dream. I was an Uber driver driving in that taxi car, but I knew that was not where I belong. And I had to dream my life today. A year ago, about this time, I said to myself, I'm going to write a book on leadership. I'm going to have minimum of 2 presidents in the book with me. And guess what? I got 5. I didn't know how. I found myself in their offices, having their mobile numbers, but we chat like friends now, right? So it's all about as far as you can dream. If you're praying for promotion in a security job, you're going to be promoted as a senior security officer. If you're praying for promotion in an Uber driver, if you're praying that, oh God, I love my job as an Uber driver, God bless me in this Uber job, the match you're going to go through is to become a luxury Uber taxi driver because that's the vision. But if you're praying and say, driving Uber now, I want to own assets in billions, as far as you can think, then you have it. Is it easy? No way. It's not easy. Like I said, I'm a product of pain. My success that I have has come through the level of pain that I've been able to endure. So I'm not one of those who got things very easy. I've been bankrupt 3 times. I've failed so many times to have everything that I have today. And it's not perfect yet because there's no such thing as perfection in life. If you want perfect life, get a job. Then you have a perfect life. But the life of an entrepreneur who wants more, there's never perfection because every day is a challenge.
A challenge worth living and makes it all worth it in the end. That's amazing. Amazing. Well, Daniel, thank you very, very much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I definitely hope we're going to be able to do this again, but very soon. You've amazing insights into your life, the industry, and I think the people watching, listening are going to be more than happy we did this. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much.